From Port Blair, Andaman. I'm here at Vandoor and there's a gorgeous sunset happening behind me. The colors are just fabulous. We arrived at Port Blair this morning and here at Vandoor rather late after sunset. The agenda is to spend the next week exploring the interior part of Andaman. And we started photography on this trip by coming here Vandoor. The Andaman stargazing and photography trip started a day early for those of us who flew into Port Blair on a Saturday in early March 2022. Reaching Port Blair early meant that we had an extra evening to visit Vandoor and a morning to explore Corbin's Cove. After seeing how beautiful the beach at Vandoor was, we were excited to shoot sunrise at Corbin's Cove the next morning. At Corbin's Cove, I had my first Milky Way sighting over the Andaman Sea because we reached there quite early in the morning. The dark night turned into blue hour quickly, and then a burst of orange in the sky indicated the start of the day. The sunrises in Andaman are really something else. The tour officially started after lunch on March 6th. There were 18 of us from different parts of India. The first beach we visited as a group was Munda Pahad at Chidiya Tapu.
Come to this spot at Chidiya Tapu. Chidiya Tapu is a coastline and it's surrounded by small hillocks. So we hiked up a hillock and reached a beautiful cliff from where we had a nice view of the ocean and the rocks below the cliff. We spent some time there listening to one of our group members strum the guitar. We tried singing along, but his singing was definitely way better. So all in all, we had a good time. Now we're heading back to the beach where I will do some sunset photography. And the hike itself was okay, not too difficult, not too easy. There's a nice path which I am walking on, and it took about half an hour to reach the top. Now we're heading back, should be a little shorter.
The first 2 days at Port Blair set the pace for the rest of the trip. Because Andaman is far to the east of India, daybreak is much earlier than in the rest of the country. On most days, we were up soon after midnight to shoot the Milky Way. During the day, we travelled on the Great Andaman Trunk Road, traversing from the south to the north. This meant that for the entire duration of the trip, none of us got enough sleep. On March 7th, we left the hotel at 4 am to travel to Rangat, which is in Middle Andaman. This already long journey was further delayed, first at Ferrargunj, where the driver of our vehicle had to submit our vaccination details to the authorities, and then at Jirkatang, where we had to wait for the convoy to take us through the Jarawa territory. A police convoy accompanies all vehicles travelling to Middle Andaman on the Great Andaman Trunk Road because it passes through the Jarawa tribal territory. After an uneventful trip through the Jarawa heartland, our next halt was at Middle Strait Jetty. We had our breakfast here and watched vehicles of all sizes being loaded onto the ferry for the river crossing. The Indian government is constructing a bridge over this river, so soon the ferry crossing will not be required. We finally reached Rangat for lunch, exhausted and hungry. I took it easy that evening, but other enthusiastic folk from our group visited the Morris Dera beach. Their vehicle broke down on the way back and they returned quite late. But by then, I was rested, so a few of us photographers went back to Morris Dera beach after midnight, where I saw a spectacular night sky over the Andaman Sea.
It's 5:30 a.m. here at Rangat in Middle Andaman. We reached here yesterday after a long journey from Port Blair. We crossed a creek by a launch or a ferry, and we drove for another 2 hours and finally reached here at Rangat after leaving Port Blair at 4 a.m. And here at Rangat, I witnessed what I think is bottle class 1 skies this morning at 1 a.m. We headed out to an east facing beach, and because there is absolutely zero light pollution in the ocean, I'm assuming that it was bottle class 1 skies. And obviously, the Milky Way was absolutely amazing. And right now, the sun is rising, although it's just 5:30 a.m. because everything is slightly early here. And this is my sleepy face and my happy face after shooting the Milky Way and after watching, after seeing bottle class 1 skies.
Our journey on the Great Andaman Trunk Road was not yet over. We left Rangat after breakfast on the 8th to first visit the Ross and Smith Islands and then Diglipur. From Rangat, it was a 3-hour journey on really bad roads to the Ariel Bay jetty. There, we hopped onto a small speedboat which took 30 minutes to get us to Ross and Smith Islands. Despite the hot midday heat, the blue waters and white sand made the islands look like paradise. The two islands of Ross and Smith are connected by a thin 50-meter long sandbar. Visitors cannot stay overnight, and the lifeguards make sure everyone leaves by 4 p.m. After our visits to the Twin Islands, we headed to the pristine beach resort in Diglipur. It was late in the evening when we reached, and I was so glad to finally rest my back on a soft bed. We were to spend the next 2 nights in Diglipur. The Kalipur beach with black sand is right next to the pristine beach resort. A few members of our group trekked to Saddle Peak on one of the days. We photographers were up shooting the Milky Way on both nights. On the second night, we encountered an olive ridley turtle nesting on the beach. A few others in our group got luckier because they got to see the forest department officials releasing newly hatched baby turtles into the ocean. It was a sighting of a lifetime. After a luxurious but sleepless stay at Diglipur, we headed back to Port Blair, but since the drive is a long one, we halted for one night at Baratang. Many from our group visited Parrot Island that evening. We stayed at the Coral Creek Resort in Baratang and visited the Limestone caves the next morning. The plan was to take the first boat to reach the Limestone caves early and avoid tourists. As we were cruising on the blue waters in our speedboat, our boatman suddenly slowed down and asked us to keep our camera gear away. He had spotted 2 Jarawa tribes people. Taking photos or interacting with the Jarawas is not only prohibited but also a punishable offense. The Jarawas are the indigenous people of the Andaman Islands and have inhabited the region for several thousands of years. Most of the other indigenous people of Andaman are extinct. The Jarawas are a nomadic tribe and ocean food is extremely important to them. So, these 2 Jarawa tribespeople were probably heading out for their morning hunt. After the exciting encounter of the Jarawas, we continued our boat ride. Soon, we entered the mangrove forest which leads to the isolated village where the limestone caves are situated. Mangroves are practically evergreen and have a complex root system which is above the water. Once we reached the land, we walked through a rustic village, took photos next to traditional houses, played with the livestock, and finally experienced the caves at leisure. The limestone caves are formed due to sedimentary rocks. They were in all abstract shapes and sizes. After our visit to the limestone caves, we continued on our journey to Port Blair. The trip officially ended on the 12th. Doing offbeat things was certainly a great way to experience the Andamans, but we had only scratched the surface of what this beautiful island region had to offer to travelers. We had covered 400 kilometers on the Great Andaman Trunk Road, photographed the night sky from places with zero light pollution, and watched the olive ridley turtles nesting, among other things such as visiting the limestone caves. But the moment which gave me goosebumps was when we saw the Jarawas, our prehistoric brothers and sisters living in harmony with nature and totally shunning modern life.